that was a big intro. Thank you. So just to start off with, I just want to take you through a few slides of some of my other projects apart from Kinfolk. So I run a design and art direction studio in North London under my own name. And it's mainly print-based book editorial work. So these are just a few projects that I've worked on. This one was recently kindly put up on It's Nice That recently, cookbook for Square Peg, Random House. And then an art publication for Artitions North, another one for Modern Art Oxford, where I was able to do my own cover in terms of letting other people fill it in, which was fun and interaction. A couple of years ago, I was also art director and designer of Lula magazine, so I redesigned that and worked on issue 15, 16, and 17. And these are some spreads from 16 and 17. Another cookbook for Hardy Grant. So I quite like the variety of doing different projects and changing my own style. I often equate, and people seem confused when I say this, equate graphic design to acting in terms of getting into a character and getting into the person's head and changing to suit their needs. So this is an art direction project I just did for Toast as well. So working on the shoot, conceptualizing it, and then bringing in the team. Which brings me up to just quickly Kinfolk. And I've actually given an issue to Rob to pass around. So when I finish, whoever's lap it's on can keep that issue because I won't be having it back, so you can have a look. Many of you probably know Kinfolk. It's a slow living lifestyle magazine based in Portland, Oregon. And its ethos is to simplify readers' lives, to cultivate community, and to spend more time with friends and family. These are its pages before I was involved, and a lot of people before I even got involved with the project were like, oh, this is quite a you project in a way. And you can see it's, it is nice, it's elegant, it's quiet in its aesthetic, which I do relate to. It's not kind of shouting, which I think agrees with its philosophy. But at the same time, when I was deconstructing it and looking at it, I found that everything was quite solid and quite straight, which at the same time as being calming, could also get quite dry. And the other thing I found was the actual structure of the magazine was very simple in that you had an image and then you'd have a picture, just with type on the other page. So it was very, it meant that it was very straightforward, and you'd have larger photo essays, but you just have text, image, text, image, text, image. So one of the things I did when I went out there was to kind of discuss the structure with them and shake that up a bit. So this is, this is some of the redesign work that I did. And when I went out, there wasn't actually a brief. I was discussing with Caroline, how was it when I went out? What did they actually say to you? And I met up with Nathan because I was art directing their clothing campaign in Copenhagen. And he was like, oh, I've seen you've done Lula. Would you come and head up the creative direction for Kinfolk magazine and redesign it? So when I flew out, I didn't actually know how far he wanted to push the magazine, and I wasn't sure where he wanted to go with it, whether it was a huge shift or not. And I think he didn't probably know himself either. So it was quite a daunting prospect going out there, and again, not working in my studio, not working in my setup, and not really knowing what the job entailed. One of the things I possibly want to buck the trend of what people have been saying today is this idea of creative freedom, which we all do love, but at the same time, it does have an established look and an established aesthetic, which it was important to retain and keep the evolution, but at the same time, I liked the fact that it had such a big aesthetic that I had to kind of struggle with and wrestle with. And I think if I'd just been told, oh, we're starting a magazine, do what you want with it, I think I possibly would have struggled more. Because it meant I had something to push against, and I could actually argue and know when I'd push too far, but also know when to push. And Nathan was very up for that. He was very keen to allow me to, say my piece, but at the same time, there was a good dialogue, a good collaboration. One of the things that I really wanted to change was the illustration style. I found that, and this was something I said quite a lot when I was there, the pages didn't dance, and I kept referring to dancing within the magazine. And again, it was a sense of movement that I felt that a lot of the pages were quite stagnant. However beautiful, and again, something that I admired, I just felt it needed some movement within it. So for the illustration work, we kept on the same illustrator, but we just asked her to create more fluidity and have the imagery be far more, the actual gouache and medium she was using to bleed more and imagery to flow off the page more. The other thing was that because I was heading up the creative direction and commissioning and coming up with the ideas, it also meant I could design to those ideas and vice versa. So for example, this running man is in the long jumper, he's in the entrepreneur's issue. And I felt that after reading the text, he represented an entrepreneur. So I could design around those illustrations at the same time. So it meant there was more fluidity on the page. The other thing was also the typography. I kept the same sort of structure to some extent with having a serif body copy, which was their in-house font, which we didn't change, Garamond. But I also used more left alignment. I brought in Swift, the typeface for the decks, which was quite spiky in my opinion, and also had text over image, which again, I'm not saying these are groundbreaking things in a design world, but they do just evolve the magazine in a subtle way. And I think that was something that was really important to maintain throughout working with the client, was their sensitivity, because everything within the pages that they've done previously has been incredibly sensitive. Their color palette, very calm and pastel, which injected a bit more color and substance, I feel, into it, but at the same time tried to maintain that idea within the book. So some more spreads. I think the other thing that wasn't discussed much or considered when people asked me about Kinfolk was actually the structure of the magazine. Because when we were thinking about evolving it, we all sat down as a team. It's very collaborative over there, and everyone has their piece, everyone says what they feel. There was a sense of Nathan saying, well, actually, I really want this to be a very mature and confident magazine, and I want to change the content. And I said to him, well, then I think to evolve it, you actually need to create a front of book section, which is much more like your current magazine, where you have an image, text, and then have longer features in a second section. So structurally reworking the magazine created quite a lot of creative freedom in terms of saying, okay, we'll introduce these fonts at this area, and we will bring in a sans serif for the body copy in different sections. Just to go through the other people that I introduced to the magazine were a list of different contributors, such as Rahel Weiss, Pele Crepin, and Sarah Maycock, an illustrator, and Anderson M Studio, Rocco Starolus. When I've been asked, how did you actually keep the evolution of the magazine without changing its current aesthetic, it was about bringing new people on board and actually commissioning them with ideas that we had. But it was also thinking, I'm not just going to cut out the people who have also been within the magazine and the family, as it were, for quite a long time. And I think that when, again, going back to sensitivity, when redesigning something, it's very easy to come in and think, okay, I need to put my stamp on this, and I need to make a claim that this was me, and I'm doing this big thing. But actually, it's about saying, well, actually, this is working, and recognizing where things work, but also saying, okay, let's broaden this and bring in additional people to help set the mood and tone, especially if you're trying to mature. And obviously, can't really talk about redesign, I feel, without talking about the logo, where I looked at it and originally was like, this is okay. But then looking at it further, realized that actually it looked like it was Trajan, the typeface, but it was also live traced. So a lot of it had very weird anomalies to it, which was quite, I found it quite stressful and quite odd. But Nathan, the founder, was also keen to maintain those, he called them wabi-sabi elements to the font, which I actually asked the designer to then keep. So for example, the O is still quite wobbly and odd, but the top type logo is the new one. And you can see it's very subtle, but it has more strength, more solidity to it, which again, when we wanted it on the newsstand, we wanted Kinfolk to be stronger and punchier. I've kind of rattled through, but I just wanted to talk towards the end about what I've learned. That was one of the things that I was asked to discuss in terms of what did I actually learn from the experience. And I think a lot of the time it would be to say to follow your intuition. There was a point at which I remember I'd done some layouts we decided we were going to do the front of book section, and that was the area which we were going to keep as similar to the old issue as previous. There was a nervousness amongst all of us. I mean, it was a small team of 5 people. There was a nervousness of, oh my God, there's a huge following around the world of this magazine. What if we alienate people, and what if we really kill our audience? They hadn't worked with me before. It was a bit of a big risk, bring me over, and we thought, well, okay, Kinfolk's often read in quite a bookish way from the cover to the back, and so the front of book section, we were saying, right, we're gonna keep similar to the old one. So you'll always find imageries framed. Again, you've got the serif typeface, you've got the illustrations only in that front section. So there's a sense of like, okay, people will get into it reading from the back, from the cover to the back. And so I went away and I was doing some design works for the front of book. And I was happy enough to show them at that point. I showed them to everybody, and everyone was like, oh, that's good, that's looking nice. And I went away that evening and I just was like, it's not right. I know it's not right at all, and I need another stab at it, and I need the opportunity to have that stab at it. And it was something I didn't really know whether I'd be given. But fortunately, I said to Nathan, listen, I know you liked it, and it's working, but there's something really, really wrong, and I don't know what it is. There's nothing glaringly obvious, but it's something I want to change. And he said, okay, fine. If you're not comfortable, go back to drawing board and start again, which I did. And I think that's something I would say is a big lesson, is to follow that gut instinct. Often refer to years ago doing painting A-level, and you just knew when you'd finished a painting. There was that initial, like, yeah, I've got this. And another thing I would say is be aware of how you work. I obviously went over, I didn't really know the setup. I didn't have my normal things around me, thrown into a situation, and I realized that I'm not used to working in a very open plan way, and it doesn't sit so easily. A lot of the time, I didn't actually have very much time to consider the redesign because I was commissioning this and coming up with all the ideas for the stories and the content. And so there was a point when Nathan was traveling a lot, and I just was able to say, listen, I'm coming in all the weekends, but I actually need to use your office space, and is it okay if I go into your little space, which is offset from everywhere else, and just knuckle down and work, just to have quiet time to work on the design? So again, I think it's having the confidence to know yourself, know how you work, but also to ask for that. Because at the end of the day, the client wants you to do the best work that you possibly can. So they should be supportive. The other thing, and these are some spreads of the ones actually going around, is, again, very, very obvious, and it's something that I say to my students where I teach at Camberwell, is print. Print, 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 print when you're doing print. But at the same time, I find people print things out, but they don't crop things. So it's not just a case of printing it out, it's actually printing it to size, but then additionally printing and putting your piece into a dummy. And often on the publications that I work for, the publishers just say, okay, these are the sizes, off you go. But it's really important to also put your work back into the book format. And I think that's something I really love about publishing and print is you've got a structural thing that you're working with. And it's very three-dimensional in that sense, and I love that. But you've also got to, I would often print, put it in a dummy and go and sit down and leaf through pretending I had a cup of tea next to me and how was I feeling? Is this how Kinfolk would feel if I was sat at home? So just, again, getting into your mindset, pretending that you're in a character and a role was really important. And then two last little things which I've learned was probably, and I made a lot of mistakes doing it, was reference imagery. We often design and we often take a lot of time on the grid, on the type, on the structure, and then we think, oh, okay, our image is going to sit here in this space. And we place an image in. But we don't give it enough time or thought. And I think that's really, really important and valid to think about when you're talking to clients is you're trying to sell to them and you're trying to seduce them. And if you're not seducing them with something that is relevant, that's going to distract them and confuse them. And I've definitely been guilty of that and was definitely guilty of this here, where I was placing imagery which was possibly more me, bit more punchy in its content and a little bit more, I don't know, brighter, or to some extent sometimes wasn't actually relevant to the article. And that would throw people off or throw the team off. And that's something that I would just pass on from the experience of actually be clever about the reference imagery you choose. And then lastly, and it's something I've brought back from the experience of being there, is flowers, which sounds incredibly Kinfolk and twee. But having something living in your studio space and having something that you change every week is really, really good. And really fun, because it also, I'm very, very messy. I'm very clean in my work aesthetic, possibly. But I really spread out. I'm a very, very messy worker. But having that, bringing in a flower every week that you change and mix up makes you clean up as well. So thank you very much. That's me.